Good morning and welcome. It's
Yeah,
apparently there's
welcome.
this live function too, so you never know.
That's what we're doing.
Someone might
We're
chime
on
in.
the live function.
That's cool.
So yeah,
So
always
viewers
enjoy
can
being with
join
you,
in
my
and
friend.
chat and
They can. They can.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I too. I've been pondering a lot about connection and community and friendship, so I'm
Mm,
just excited to talk to you.
yeah. I mean, I feel like that's
And
always the foundation of
I
what we're up to. So
in soaking in the sort of July 4th festivities and the World Cup and the Tour de France and the summer festivities in general.
mm,
I've I've been working on this Substack article, and also um, just really been affected by the notion that humans are striving for this collective experience. And
mm.
there's a phrase that was coined, collective effervescence,
Collective
and
effervescence.
it's like, yeah, yeah, being being together in a large collective, or
Mm,
yeah, I would say like collective consciousness. And in this case, like watching fans at the World Cup in triumph together, and even watching fans of opposing teams and how they interacted with each other, and they just finding elements of humanity that were sort of both like the substrate and sort of above the game. Um, and
mm.
then watching my neighborhood happens to be quite patriotic, and they're like coordinated festivities. There's this giant kids slip and slide in the park, and there's the beer mile for the adults, and
Hmm.
there's a huge block party water balloon fight. Um,
Fun.
People are hungry. Yeah, people are hungry for a collective experience.
Hmm.
And I know in your recent years of the van living and dipping your toe in the festival waters, that I
Hmm.
was curious just to know what your read on humanity's drive is for this, and what
Yeah.
what it could mean for us, and
Mm.
and furthermore, maybe in the beyonder sort of super givers realm, like how do we live more into this in a daily how do we live more into collective effervescence in our daily lives.
Nice. Mm. I was at the Tour de France, how many years ago? Geez, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, on one of those mountain stages where everyone's like, "Yeah, yeah, 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 yeah," and, like, the riders are riding right through you, and everyone has costumes on and, all this just wild and crazy. I mean, it was an amazing experience. It was an amazing experience, and it was
Mm.
5 hours of standing in this place, and then the riders come, and they're by you in 12 seconds, and it's kind of amazing. I mean,
Mhm.
it's just they're going so fast, and beforehand, it's really fun because it's a whole all the sponsor cars come by, all the there's riders riding up and down the thing all day long, like just regular people riding on coming up and down, and I mean, it is a gigantic, beautiful, amazing scene,
Mm.
and I've watched it on TV for so long, uh, you know, and then to see it in person was really fun.
Mm.
Yeah, yeah.
And did you feel what did you feel from the sort of collective spirit of being that proximal to such an amazing event, but also within the like audience, the
Y-
fan base.
Yeah, I think the way that I think about this a lot, just because all my sports, all of my sports stuff and our sports stuff, and I always think about, well, what is it? Why is it that in many cases the football coaches of the state the highest paid state employee in many states is the university football coach, University of Michigan football coach, University of Illinois football coach, Alabama football coach is the highest paid state employee. And I was always like, that makes so little sense to me. And the way that I feel it when I feel into it is that people are really hungry for meaning. There's really, really hungry for meaning, and to identify with something, identify with activities, teams, things like that, that help pull, help me pull through my days. And then the collective piece feels like, I mean, one is I think, we're sort of animals of connection, that there is a desire to be in groups. And there's all kinds of, stuff about both the power and the danger of groups in there when they get together. And there's a place of when you feel allegiance, when I feel allegiance, I don't feel so alone. And so there's a collective feeling. There's a feeling, what I can see in so many of the World Cup images when they show the fans, and both in the winning and in the losing part of it, because that's a huge part of it. But the identification with the team is so strong, and it provides a whole bunch of structure for life. And then it provides a lot of validation, because here you are with a lot of other people also cheering, also committed, also involved, also, on team Argentina. So that's sort of the way that I often think of it and frame it and try to make sense of that we are really hungry for meaning. And that's a place that this culture, both the United States, but I think maybe the world, offers structure for meaning.
There's also, as you're speaking, I think, an element of permission for conviction. Like this kind of, like, I'm picturing when I've been at a sporting event of my favorite team, I have this sort of liberatory permission to cheer really loudly and to let myself go a little bit. And I don't do that in my living room. I think about how much money people will spend on music concerts, and how much, like, these bands are able to charge. It's incredible. You could listen to it basically for free in your own home, or you can pay hundreds, if not sometimes thousands of dollars to go have this collective experience. And I think part of it is because there is something original that is unfolding in the collective, even if it is a arrangement, or a game, an arrangement for which the notes and the lyrics, or a game for which the rules, and you might even have a sense of the outcome. It is something that will never happen again in this exact way. And that's obviously, that has a value, because people are paying. The average ticket I heard for the NBA Finals for the Knicks at MSG was $7,500.
Wow,
Did you see
that's
this?
amazing. No,
$7,500, the average ticket.
Wow.
Not the average, 100 level. The average ticket.
Average ticket, yeah.
So these are all, pop cultural forms of this that we can critique and deconstruct. I'm interested in some of the deconstruction. I'm mostly interested in the synthesizing of, as you and I do and are, the synthesizing of and the catalyzing of this, so that we don't have to pay $7,500 to go to a World Cup game or an NBA Finals, or fly out to the Pyrenees to watch a stage of the Tour de France. Those are actually extremely exclusive opportunities.
Yep.
Or drive out into the playa and pay thousands of dollars to go to Burning Man.
Right.
I think if anything, that the first part of this conversation, that we're establishing the cultural hunger to be part of something really meaningful that we have permission to let ourselves loose into.
Yeah.
And as we say that, it's sort of like, yeah, no shit, but it's really exciting to see see it happening everywhere. And then also, of course, there are like these concerns, like, wow, if that's the bar to be able to find this, how can we work on similar type experiences or similar type collectivism with much more inclusive access points?
Yeah, it's funny. I like the idea of
I'm not sure you and I are here to solve that today, but
yeah, but it's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I remember in 1991, the Blackhawks, the Chicago Blackhawks, my hockey team were in the Stanley Cup Finals, and I'm at college. And somehow I remember I was watching in my dorm room, which I now can't even figure out how in the world that was happening, but whatever. So there I am watching the game, and a friend of mine comes in who doesn't particularly know that I'm a sports fan, because I was like, anyway, just he knew me in a different context. And I was totally into the game, and the Blackhawks scored, and I jumped off the couch and was like, yeah. And he just looked at me and slowly backed out of the room. I was like, okay, I'm gonna come back. I'm gonna come back later. And it's exactly that experience that you talked about. Like I was embarrassed because I didn't, he just didn't know that side of me. And I was totally into it. And so the idea of going to a stadium to be able to be around other people going crazy in that same kind of way, there's something to that, where there's an acceptance, where there's an invitation, where there's an allowing of that kind of spirit. And I think that we're all hungry. I'm hungry for that level of exuberance. I want life to feel that exciting, that alive, that meaningful, that that powerful, it's an expression that feels really true. To totally let loose and bring ourselves feels really like something. Yeah, that makes sense that we want that. I think as I say it, part of the challenge that I realize with it is that um it's kind of a false bill of goods, I think, in the sense of it, you get there and like, yeah, I feel that yeah. But then to me, there always enters the question of like, is this all there is?
Yeah.
Is this okay? So we won, or we lost, but we won. I always think about this with the Super Bowl champions, where they've reached the pinnacle, or the Stanley Cup champions. Like you've reached the pinnacle. Like here it is. Here is the moment you've been living your whole life for. You have won the championship. You're here, and you're at the top of the mountain. And I can almost feel this. Oh, is this all there is? And then a kind of a place of like, okay, where is there to go from here? And right. And it's like, oh wow, and Aaron Rodgers actually, in my conversations with him when I met him years ago, we talked about this exact thing. And that was kind of the beginning of his journey into where do I really find meaning? Because I think that's what we're ultimately talking about here. All of this is how do we find meaning in our lives? And that is a way that perception wise is one of, the World Cup is one of the most meaningful moments theoretically to be able to go and cheer and be there, and it's full of that, and which is both beautiful and, as you're saying, a little bit fraught with some challenging pieces. And what happens when you lose? There's that question too. I mean, I guess you keep striving.
Yeah. Well, I think it's the opportunity. I mean, part of it is the opportunity to find meaning independent of outcome, which is like that's a deep pursuit that I don't know how many fans take, but some fans may just already arrive there and live in a really healthy place. Those of us like me who really have worked through lifelong over-identification with our sports teams have to untangle some things, you know.
I had a day. I just had a moment when I was watching the Stanley Cup Finals years later, and the Blackhawks lost a game, and I was standing in my living room with my kids, and I was just so angry and frustrated that I like yelled at one of my kids. And I just thought, okay, this is like my day and my well-being is based on whether this team wins or loses. I have no control over it. Like I can't keep doing this unless I enjoy the
No.
process, unless I enjoy, I'm able to be enjoying the feelings of rooting for my team, of the wins, the losses, the ups, the downs, the nervousness, the anticipation. Like I got to enjoy all of that and not be dependent on the outcome of it. And I just switched right in that moment and just said, okay, if I'm gonna be a fan, I'm gonna be here with my kids. I'm not gonna let my team losing have me freak out on my kids. Just not okay.
Yeah.
Anyway, I think you were gonna go somewhere with.
There you are. Yeah. We're having a little lag with the video in case some of this sounds weird.
Yeah.
I think what I think why I bring this up is that it feels like this is a time in our species development, our civilization development, where we're building towards some version of a collective experience, and it could be many stages, it could have many layers. I think that regardless of somebody's information sources or their point of view or their identities and affiliations, most of us, and maybe more than any time in modern history, maybe since the 60s, who knows, most of us really feel that something is happening and escalating. And I'm just thinking, like, we don't even have to get into the mechanics of that stuff, because those are just like the catalysts for this underlying wave of transformation that seems to be brewing. It's almost like when you feel the undertow pull back in the ocean, and a big wave is coming. That's what it feels like to me. And I think, like, these experiences where we come together under some, call it a fabricated unification, whether it's a band at a summer concert or a soccer match. It's all that stuff kind of goes away, and we get to experience the undertow together. We get to experience the wave together. And I wonder if it pulls at the best in people, especially when I see fans at the World Cup, consoling fans of opposing teams. And, when I see, and believe me, I have a ton of criticism of the World Cup. I actually think FIFA really turned me off to being a soccer fan just by watching how just the game design seems so flawed to me. But that's a whole other thing. So I'm not trying to glorify soccer. It's just like in the milieu right now, right? But seeing Tour de France rivals hug at the finish line, that's where our humanity is in the wave, and it feels like it's a wave that's either going to tsunami us away, or it's one that we can catch together. I think I have this line in Transcendence. I could be thinking of like a draft. I don't even know if it's in the book,
Yeah.
to be honest. It's like, you know, swim together or drown alone kind of thing. I think we're
Mm,
sensing that the swim together moment is near.
yeah. Yeah. One is like I love that
So,
in my
so just the last thing, Morgan,
yeah.
just to finish
Yeah.
that, to
Yeah.
bring this back into what you're saying about like, should we be concerned that it like, is this as good as it gets at a Taylor Swift concert? You know, I think like anything, if we let it only exist in these places, in the
Right.
concerts and the events,
Right.
then we're gonna we're gonna miss out potentially. If
Yeah.
we let these concerts and events build and cultivate our connection with this part of ourselves, can we live with that collectivist belief, that connection to our own humanity, the ability to feel so much connection to maybe source or maybe something that underlies all the things that get in the way of humanity, that allows us to console, to
Mm,
forgive, to be in something together and really have the sort of illusion of sides dissolve into
yeah.
something more unifying.
Mhm.
So if we can go from this, you know, it feels like the summer is a really big time where this happens.
Mm, yeah.
So I just wanted to say, like, you know, I think it is really troubling if that's all we get.
Right. Yeah. I was lost for a moment in the I love body surfing. And so the feeling of standing in the water and the wave, the current
Mhm.
pulling at my feet as the wave comes is such a visceral, beautiful, powerful feeling. And then for me, the experience is that's when it's getting really good. That's when it's getting really exciting because I feel the pull, feel the pull, feel the pull, and it then allows me to launch into the wave and then be carried, you know, over and down into the experience of then being in and part of the wave. And so it's this intense, powerful. And so as you're sharing that, I was thinking of that. I'm thinking, okay, how do we cultivate that to be able to? It's a moment of fear also. Like there's a moment where it's shaky because there is a suck. There's a, am I going to get sucked under? And if I,
Yeah.
and if I wasn't experienced or didn't, that it would be easy to get really scared and go under instead of launch. And so how the thought of collectively playing that edge and then launching into this delicious, beautiful, powerful experience of riding the wave of being, headed in the direction we want to be headed in, and having that is really quite exciting. And so to me, it's just funny. I almost feel self-conscious of how this all comes back to the same place for me, which is being grounded and present in myself.
Mhm.
Is that the real meaning and purpose comes from being home inside of myself, that I don't need to have, like you were saying, I don't need to have the World Cup experience or the Tour de France experience or the um, you know concert festival kind of thing. I don't need to have those because I've got meaning right here. To me, connecting with you, being right here is just a beautiful expression of meaning of life that brings me a huge amount of joy and purpose. From there, to be able to then go out and have these experiences feels like a different expression than relying on them to provide meaning and structure
Mm,
for myself, because that feels fragile and dependent on wins and losses and dependent on finding the right team to be on, versus being out in the world. And like, I'm really intrigued about this collective of how do we gather there. I think this is what a lot of the festivals that I went to were aiming to do, is
yeah.
to gather people excited to live, excited to thrive, excited to bring some level of consciousness and awareness together, and then and
Yeah.
then live from that place and
I
celebrate and
mean,
really celebrate that.
what I notice is that the degree to which I feel isolated really impacts how much I feel trust in the collective.
Mm,
And that might be another sort of Captain Obvious statement, but let me unpack it a little bit. So
yeah.
yesterday, just through a series of natural endings of things, I was really just feeling the grief of,
Mm,
kind of leaving a pocket of community, and feeling the in-betweenness, the the like isolation of summer that sometimes happens when you're out of sync with people who are traveling and stuff like that, and
mhm.
it's nothing major, but I felt it enough. I was like, oh yeah,
Yeah.
do I have,
Beautiful.
and then all of a
Yeah.
sudden, I'm taking it to the point of like, do I really have community? Do I
Mm,
actually? And it's humblingly easy to feel alone. And I'm probably, better supported and loved than, gosh, a large percentage of people who feel really alone out there. And so I start to wonder, are there ways to support collective effervescence if we broaden the collective, to like, there is no individual. Like when I go out on the run this morning in the woods, I can connect with the trees in the air and the birds. It's a different sort of connection, of course, you know, and it's maybe not as effervescent or ecstatic
mm,
as being at the Super Bowl or being at a Taylor Swift. Like that has a certain amount of critical mass of energy that is undeniable. And it may not be qualitatively distilled in a way that is the same as a really moving meditation session.
mhm, mhm,
But I'm not here to put either of them down. I think they all probably have their place. Because what
mhm,
I notice is if I'm too isolated, not connected with, something outside of myself, then my effervescence plummets.
mhm.
And I'm sure that's pretty, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And
Go.
go ahead.
Um, yeah, as you describe being on the run and as you describe being connected, to me, that's what I call home. That place of home inside of self, home inside of, and I like the idea of the trouble with loneliness isn't that you aren't around other people. It's that I'm not with myself.
Mm,
And so that's where the loneliness stems from, is that to be able to come back home, be with self, know that you're okay, know that you're loved because because I've got love for myself. When I am in that place, then one is it's really hard to then get lost in the world, because whatever happens is I'd always know I can come back to myself, versus when I export that and have it be part of, okay, well, I'm good if my team wins, but if my team loses, then I always see the kids crying at the World Cup. They're just like so devastated the team lost, and I just think, oh boy, you know they're identifying with something outside of themselves versus inside of themselves. and that want to be identifying with something inside of ourselves. I just feel like that's so much, so much healthier. So it seems to me then the run becomes a place of, okay, here I am connected, and no, it's not as there aren't fireworks and
Yeah.
all that on the run, but what there is a deep sense of meaning. And I've been really tuning in a lot lately too, because there's a lot of people in my life, family members and and dear friends, like people close to me, who are um, doing like sort of behaving in ways that's confusing to me, and feels harmful both to the people they love and sort of to themselves. And I just think your soul knows better. I think if you
Mm.
really sit down and get honest with yourself, there's a different expression in the world that you're aiming for. And and to me, that's when I go to a sporting event, I know that it's qualitatively different than sitting and meditating, but I can feel the meaning of the meditation, of the being with nature, of being with myself, as aligned in a deep way that then allows me to go out and have a different expression. And actually, finding community
Mm.
around that level. One, it's been challenging for me in much of my life to be able to find that. I've been searching for it for a long time, because that's where I really think we take off. I think that's actually the change that I think gets me excited and intrigued, is when we meet in that place.
Mm. I was going to ask you, I don't want this to be reduced to a how to. I'm wondering, I know in your book you write about I've got me, which is what you're alluding to, I think, a little bit.
Right.
And is it simply the dedication of years and sessions and sitting and like just paying attention and creating intention, or is there something else that you would recommend somebody try in order to continue cultivating this really internal connection with, like, I love myself, I've got myself, and I am always home and anchored.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm intrigued by, of course, right. I mean, I think about this all the time, because I work with my clients in that way of like, how do we really come home? Like, what is it to really do that? But I think about it in terms of the characters in your book, in Transcendence, of you so beautifully capture this wrestling with, um, how do I be the right version of myself? I know that, I just always think of the level of like vengeance that shows up, of wanting to replicate the violence that's been done to me on someone else. That it feels like so many of the characters wrestle with that, and they come to this place where they're like, like they know, like the force is like, I want to just kill you, and just like, and they hold back and take a different path. And to me, that's the like, I just so beautifully felt that in your book. And to me, like, that's the wrestling of being in those moments of how do we listen at that level to what really matters for us. Like, wait, how do I wake up to that? How do I cultivate that, so that then, because like, to me, they so beautifully, um, um, stand on the side of their own soul, I like to say.
Hmm.
You know that this, this feels like the right way to go. And so to me, it's like it's the practice, which is a daily practice for me, is sitting and coming home to that feeling, is going and finding that feeling inside of myself of, I know how I want to treat people, I know what it feels like, and then being able to be in the we have to go towards difficulty in life, like we can't avoid the and um like getting really good at it.
Hmm.
So I don't know, like I'm
Getting
curious
really,
for you,
getting really good at, yeah.
at being uncomfortable, at being
Yeah.
Hadley and I just last night were talking about, we were like sitting outside and there were mosquitoes and we were just like aggravated by the mosquitoes. And, we got a couple mosquito bites, and then we thought, Jesus, back in the day, like whatever, Lewis and Clark, or before modernity, like there weren't just 5 mosquitoes, there were like 500 mosquitoes, and there were just there were much more, the natural world was much more um, harsh. You can go back, way back, and just, what was it like to live without heat, without running water, without other sorts of things, and people like dealt with way more adversity than we deal with today, generally. I mean, not everyone, but you know most of us in the United States have at least have running water, toilets, food. you know and that's not always been the case, you know so I feel like we've lost some of the toughness, maybe, of and meaning, I might say, in those places. So I feel like we got to get back to some of the ability to sit with uncomfortable things.
Yeah.
But I'm curious
Yeah.
for
As
you,
a
like your
starting, as
characters. Yeah, I guess, sorry, as a starting place, because but I'm curious, like for you with your characters in the book, of like, you have a sense of this, like, where, like, I'm curious inside of you, like, where did that come, like, where's that, how did you find that in the writing? I find it so intriguing.
mm, yeah, you know this phrase, the writing works on us.
Yeah.
I mean, not sure if it needs to be quoted or not, but I felt like the best thing about writing that book is that it's actually challenging me to find these pieces of myself, and I'm a little hesitant with it because my wife, Clara, finally finished the book, and she didn't totally buy the the, the pivotal point when they're all in the three-way, four-way standoff, and um and so I had to sit knowing
Mhm.
knowing that the outcome could only be nonviolent. That was a non-negotiable. That was the point of the book.
Yeah, right.
That I had to find my way through it in a way that felt like the characters earned it themselves. And of course, the characters are all me. I mean, they're all everything we
Sure.
write is all expressions of us, right? So the
Totally.
characters are in some way,
Hmm.
and so I had to be with all these parts of myself
Mm.
parsed out into these characters to really wrestle with it. And I don't know how successful I was or if I bypassed stuff, but I had to go to those places in myself to say, like, how would this character actually be with this, not just
Mm.
skip over it in some fantastical way and come to
Yep.
some unrealistic end. And again, I don't know how successful that was, but I continue to stay with it, and that's part of the effort of the Substack writing, and then also in the novel, in the Transcendence series and beyond, is
Hmm.
to find myself in this discomfort, and to find myself in these questions, and to keep
Hmm.
working them,
Hmm.
and to come to um, 4th of July, and um, 4th of July is like a really I'm just mentioning that because it was just 12 days ago.
Yeah.
It's a really activating time of year for folks, especially as the just like deconstruction of our socio-political systems continue to become transparent, and
Hmm.
all the power systems continue to become transparent with their corruption and stuff. And so it's getting increasingly more uncomfortable for people. I could feel,
To celebrate.
and or just to be with it. I think some people choose celebration as almost defiance,
Mm.
and then some people choose celebration probably from a more integrated place, which I'm not quite there. And then
Hmm.
some people choose to just sort of ignore. And then, there's all the ways that we can relate to
Yeah.
things. It's the
Yeah.
same thing with like Christmas holidays and stuff that has a lot of activation for a lot of reasons. And what I noticed was I was really wanting to be with this sort of delightful discomfort of, meeting neighbors who I didn't know and just getting into a personable level of connection. And so we'd have these, you have these little introductory conversations with people over
Mm.
plates of carrot sticks and
Yeah. Right. Chicken wings.
tortilla chips and,
Mhm.
burger. Yeah. And a lot of times they devolve into these 5-minute things about how long they've lived here.
Right.
Um, which is also, side note, kind of intriguing because it does have this almost unconscious longing for commonality and unity, but that's
Right.
another conversation. But what I noticed was I wanted to follow where my, just because we're using this term, effervescence was with these
Yeah.
people. And so I just gave myself, as we've talked about before, and I know you and I experiment with this stuff, I just sort of I just sort of asked people, like, what's alive in you? What's alive in your world? What are you excited about?
Mm.
Um, you know, and instead of being like, like what is your job and where are you from? It was more like what excites you in the world? And people, they had a little bit deer in headlights, but people were able
Yeah.
to respond. And
It's a
and
beautiful
I think I
question.
use that not, but not so much to get lost in the mechanics of that, but more as an example of what you're saying. Like, I wanted to be anchored in my aliveness, in
Mm.
my, and maybe this is part of turning 50 this year, is like I just feel my inhibitions dissolving more and more. um and that's wonderfully liberating to be able to just be like, well, if they think I'm weird or they don't want to connect, like I'm not really bothered by that as much as I would have been 10, 15, 20, 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So
As you're, as you,
it feels like it felt like an example of, I've got
yeah.
me and I want to continue to live from that place.
Yeah. And my sense is like there's a, as you described that, the thing that came to me is there's a hunger. I think there's a real hunger in us to connect, and there's a hunger in me to connect. That's why I went to all the festivals. That's why, searching for connection, like really searching for connection. And
Yeah.
I sense that collectively we really are searching for connection, and the collective effervescence, the feeling of being, like, I think it's a beautiful feeling that we naturally want more of, and is so fraught, like at those barbecues, those picnics, where it's like we know that there are landmines everywhere. As soon as we start to identify with, I'm on this team, you're on that, I'm left, you're right. How do you feel about Trump? Blah, 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 blah. Like any kind of political anything, it just devolves really fast, and it's not safe territory for anyone really. And so there's this, hey, how long have you lived here? Because it feels like safe harbor. So your
Safe
question is
harbor.
beautiful, right? Because it's like we want the connection is so desirable, like we really want that. And so then I jump to the
Tires.
world.
Yeah.
yeah, the desire is so true and honest and alive and so hard to find. You know, I think it's hard to find these days. And so my suspicion about the world, that as you said that, then I thought about the World Cup and I was like, oh, well, that's a place where we can come together and we aren't talking about what political team are you on? What is your affiliation? We're just all on teams, Spain. Like we're all together. And you just know that the
Well,
team
teams,
Spain
team,
supporters,
team soccer, team World Cup.
team soccer, team World Cup, totally. Like it is because it is a beautiful image
Hmm.
of people from opposing teams embracing and holding each other in the victory and in the loss. Like that's a beautiful coming together. Like that's the kind of humanity that I want to exist in the world. I love it when I see things like
Yeah.
that. Like it's a celebration of caring for one another that feels so lively and true and to me that's the beauty of it. And we know that there's plenty, all of team Spain, all of team soccer, we have all kind of wild differences, but the differences get put aside as we dance into this celebration of soccer.
And aside, but then also, I think it's really critical to say there's something that people connect with that I don't know. I mean, I can't speak for other people. I know for me, it's hard to come from that place of humanity from my own self moving. If I'm being moved by like an inspirational event, then I can get in contact with the part of me that it's not even that it's a side. It's like that it no longer, maybe it is a side, but it's that we found something that's underneath. It's more central.
Mhm.
That's more, actual to our shared experience. And I think a lot of these ideologies and ways that we identify, like, hey, I'm on Team France and you're on Team Argentina, and that construct, that choice, all of a sudden separates our humanity and diminishes our ability to connect. Just like anything, right? I'm on Team man and my wife's on Team women, and like there's all these stories about generalizations about men and women and their struggle to, you know, um, their struggle to harmonize in domestic ways. And, of course, then there's the obvious I'm on team blue and you're on team red, or I'm on team socialism and
Left.
you're on team capitalism, whatever it is.
Yeah, right.
Those constructs, yeah, they sort of like close us around ourselves. And so it's not even a side, it's almost like that closing bubble becomes dissolved, and all of a sudden it's just our energy being together, not so much our identities, which are just kind of these made up things.
Right.
And again, sometimes those identities have really important functions, and they are, critical um, in certain places in life. So I'm not necessarily, lobbying for a universal shedding of all of our labels. I'm just noting that there's something that we sort of pierces that bubble. And clearly it's an it's a it's a really transformative, potentially sought after experience, because people are willing to give up so much in their lives to get it. So there's no doubt that humanity is starved for it, and also that it could be, I think, a medicine for the collective moving forward. And
Hmm.
just in ending here, because I need to end in the next couple of minutes,
Okay.
I want to talk to you more about, how to potentially co-create our versions of those
Mm-hmm.
experiences. When you spoke earlier about yourself, I was thinking, like, why can't we create some? The intention gives it a different anchoring for me than maybe I've had. So thank you for
Yeah.
that. And,
So yeah, will you
I
just
want to
say it
hear
again?
your
The the
last
the
thoughts
video
before
the
we wrap up.
video the video glitched right when you said that. So just say your last thought again.
Uh, just thank you for bringing the example of, connecting with yourself and
Mm.
the really the conviction and the passion and the dedication you bring to your work. And what I was sort of summarizing before was just how hungry the world is for this, and how
Mhm.
this conversation and some of the recent events of the summer have really helped me distill what it is that can happen in
Yeah.
retreats and in intentional um, collective experiences. And I think that gives me a little bit of energy and motivation and direction if we were to
Mhm.
like pursue some of that together.
Nice. Love it. Yeah, I love the idea of that. And like you said, the for me, it just comes like I'm so surprised and always so confused that I know the energy of what I want to create and bring in the world. And yet I forget it. So I forget it really easily. Like day to day I forget it. And so the practice for me is I got to remind myself of what it feels like to be the guy who holds the other team when they lose. What it feels like to be the
Yeah.
friend who really listens, who shows up. So that's a daily connection for me because I don't want to get far away from it. And it feels to me like that is the beautiful expression that I want in the world, that I feel like that's our way through this craziness, is to love and care for one another. And then the other piece that just came up was, there was a study done it was a really creative study actually, where they had people of color going to houses and spending time at the door canvassing, like talking about some political issue or some environmental issue or something like that. And they were monitoring the amount of time that the people were staying at the doorway, and it was really low, so that there was not a lot of tolerance for people of difference and they did it both ways. So it was like just it was in this particular case like the racial differences, just people were not staying at the door a long time.
Okay.
Right, that makes sense. And then they inserted this in this sort of creative way, inserted this idea that there was some alien um presence or some alien questions in the community, so that there's this like bigger thing that we ought to be worried about, just subtly, just super subtly, like in some way the study did
Mhm.
this. And then they did the
Mhm.
same thing where they would go to the doors again and spend time like at the doors. And what happened was that as soon as there was a bigger thing to be worried about,
Yeah.
the amount of time at the door expanded, because now
Yeah.
we weren't worried about white, black, left, right, the petty things. We were worried about this bigger threat. And so we're then able to bring our humanity together. I don't know exactly how that translates into, like, do we want a bigger threat so that we can all come together kind of thing? But
No.
but
Mhm.
no, but there's some
Don't fall
like
for.
there's
Yeah.
right, don't fall for it. But there's something in there. There's something in there about our humanity,
Yeah.
and that and
A
that
hundred
and that
percent.
that comes right back to the World Cup and all those kind of things. So anyway, just collective effervescence. I like it as an idea, and always enjoy spending time with you, my friend.
You too. Thanks for taking the time. I hope we can do this in a couple weeks. And
Yeah, let's do
thanks
it.
for those who are listening. Feel free to subscribe to our writing and check out our projects and
Yeah, be in
come to
touch.
one of our conversations and join in on the chat.
Yeah,
Love you, my friend.
be well. Love you too.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.